I'll go.
Hello and welcome to 100% Real with Ruby. Today is, I guess, I'm giving you two desserts on a plate before we even give you a main because I have two amazing behavior, habit change, all mindset. Well, I guess meant like the mentality behind everything that you do and how to create sustainable change. But not only that, marrying it with the fact that if you want to get results and keep them, how you get those results is the most important thing. So with that, I have Ben Mayfield Smith, and I have Dalton Frank back for a second appearance here. And I guess a way to have you both kind of introduce the way that you view this stuff is to talk a little bit more about how not only motivation itself, but types of motivation plays such a pivotal role in initiating and sustaining change, and how our expectations, how our awareness, and how our perception in itself plays such a big role in not only the results, but in our initial stages of change, which I would argue are probably the most important, because how you start a journey can dictate what happens next.
So true. Love it. I'll leave Ben to take it away because we've had a chat already, Ruby and I'll let Ben to start warming us up, but I'm ready to dive in once he's finished as well. But thanks for having us back.
Let's do it. Yeah, I appreciate the invite. Firstly, obviously it's always a great time for me to ramble on this stuff. It's what I'm at uni for, so I love it. And it's definitely a very humbling experience or moment for me to be on the podcast with Dalton, as we've talked about already, that we've always gone on podcasts as like athlete and coach. So now to be on here as someone rambling shit alongside him is always very, very fun for me. So I guess like when it comes to like my approach to motivation or motivating a client and seeing where we are, like it's all going to depend on the client journey and why they're coming to me and where we're starting and kind of what they're hoping to achieve. How I motivate or coach or keep accountable a client that is looking to me for lifestyle change, lifestyle intervention is very different to the client that I take through a prep, though not extremely different. They're not so much alternate pathways, destinations, but rather the pathway is slightly different. A lot of the time, and I've spoken about this when I did my presentation in America, and it kind of like almost blew minds, which kind of surprised me and realized how much it actually does need to be talked about, is the way I coach my bodybuilders isn't much different to how I coach my lifestyle, life change clients, my behavior change clients, because I'm still building the same intrinsic, I'm still building the same fundamental and base routines and systems. It's just that the extremity gets a bit more extreme, no surprise. The clients that are trying to get to the 3% body fat mark don't have the room for error that, say, someone who's just getting to, basic lifestyle change, basics like behavioral modifications. They have that room and that variability for error that your advanced athlete doesn't. So the basis to me when it comes to that motivational identification is actually pretty similar. But if we go back to, I guess, like the client journey, that onboarding, it really starts for me to get a hold of that motivational understanding with why they're coming to me. What is the goal? What is the reason for the goal? What's the direction of the goal? What's the values behind that goal? Because all that starts to dictate an impact on their intrinsic motivation. And our goal, I strongly believe as coaches, is to derive as much intrinsic love for the behaviors we're trying to fix as possible and elicit that from our client. Though we're not, the perma motivation, which I think me and Dalt will probably agree on this, is that people synonymously mistakenly use motivation for inspiration. We are not the inspiration our client needs. We're there to facilitate and extract the motivation as intrinsically as possible. So that to me starts when we lay down the foundations for our goal setting. So a big part of the process for us is what I call my like a matter method to goal setting, which is a 5-year, 3-year, 12 months, 6 months, 3 months, and 12 weeks, 6-week spreadsheet predicated on your values and then broken into your priorities. And then from there, I want to see that broken down between your personal life, your business or career, and your physique goals. Because that then to me tells me that your overall or your overarching theme or the superordinate goal that we have is progress. If I can get you striving towards progress in all aspects of life, then I can have you associate the positive emotions and the positive experience as intrinsically as possible. And we can start to connect that, I guess, that pathway to success and result as intrinsically positive as possible. If one of those things to me lapses, I start to see decline in the client performance. So if I've got someone who's got absolutely dick skin shredded and they got first place on stage or something like that, but their life has collapsed, my belief is I've failed as a coach. So to me, the role, I guess, of a performance coach is to improve and optimize performance. We are performing in every aspect of our life. So to me, that motivational job, for me, the motivation is to elicit the highest degree of performance in all aspects of their life and all areas of their life, which then result in success. So if I can get them to that motivational level where they love what they're doing and they love the way that we're doing it and they love the overall progress towards life that they have, I'm doing my job, and they have got that. The intrinsic motivation seems to come forward a lot more. So that to me is like how I kind of derive and approach motivation from my client. You know, we'll use things like, me and Dolt both did Gary for our behavioral change and motivational interviewing. So, you know, we go through like looking for change talk, looking for that, the progression through the trans theoretical model, making sure that we're looking for that, the positive moving forward language, making sure that we're correctly engaging as a coach to elicit that more intrinsically loved Socratic goal, like to get to the deeper reasoning, get to the deeper meaning, and make sure that the client is connected to it as deep as possible. That to me then is like, if I can do that in not only your physique goal, because, well, anyone can get lean. That's not anything impressive, provided that we do it in the right way. But if you can get lean, you can improve your relationships with your family, with your friends, your career improves as well. You increase your education and you build your business, or your business is growing alongside of you. Then there is an intrinsic love for life that you have, not just your physique. And that to me is like the ultimate motivator.
I want to shoot you some questions before Dalton speaks in. Do you find that lifestyle clients come to you comparing to a bodybuilding world? Because that seems to be the expectation, or is your goal even your own? And then bringing in the performance, being beyond the gym, seeing like, how can we then feed that into seeing it as a way to create more of a superglue and shift, like a superglue to shifting your identity, which in itself is the core of change. You need identity change. And then bringing in that last aspect of lean. When people think lean, they also have an unrealistic idea of what lean is in the real world. Like, they think lean is nothing on your body is allowed to jiggle. You're made out of wood. You're like this skeleton where nothing at all can be pinched, can be rolled. So where do expectations fit into that, which is something Dalton can probably feed off after too?
Yeah, for sure. So going back to expectations, and do clients come to us expecting they have to be bodybuilders? We actually had to do some content on this because we had a few of these case scenarios, or these case studies kind of come through. And excuse me, what I got to the bottom of was, I don't expect all clients to be bodybuilders, but rather what I do is I take from bodybuilding as a discipline, and I encourage behaviors that I know are successful and lead to long-term success in a client on the stage, and try and implement them into a client. Now, that's not to say you've got to be 3% body fat, but rather, how can I look at this? And this is like a philosophy that Matter has had the whole time. And that is, how do I look at those who are successful in elite worlds and teach the average person to be it? Because to me, I believe there is another level that people can operate at that we're not quite getting to in just general population. So it's not like, hey, you've got to be a 6 times a week gym goer. You've got to track every macronutrient. You've got to, weigh out your food. You've got to weigh out your water. You've got to do all these things. It's more so, what are the traits and skills that good bodybuilders have? They've got goal orientation. They've got positive language about themselves. They've got delayed gratification. They have time management. They have self-awareness, and they have intensity towards what they execute. So how do I get that to my average client who just wants to improve life and, look better, move better, be 60 and not have to be stuck by a chair or a crutch or something like that? So when I get those clients in, they're like, I don't actually want to be a bodybuilder, but I want to kind of get some of the progress. Well, isn't that bodybuilding? Like, we're bodybuilding, but taking away the stage side. You're improving body composition. You're training to improve muscle mass, skeletal muscle mass, and bone density. You're improving overall appreciation for nutrition, and you're learning about how to train with true intensity. And we're going to do it over a period of time where we give you phasic approaches so you can learn about how to cut and grow and maintain, high calories, maintain low calories, be in a healthy body fat range, improve health markers and blood markers. Isn't that just bodybuilding? So it's not so much that you want to be a bodybuilder without competing. Sorry, it's not so much that you have to come to me a bit to be a bodybuilder, but we can take that identity of the traits that go with a successful bodybuilding prep and kind of teach people how to use some of it. It's like, what do the bros get right and how to implement it? Some of those things they got pretty well right when it comes to like the broness. As for the narrative, I guess identity shift, it is a very big part of how I approach, something that I'm lucky enough to have gone through sports psychology, performance psychology, is McAdams' 3-layer model. And it's a very powerful tool for having people understand their social narrative and how they create the story that they tell the world as who they are. And, as someone who's been an athlete most of my life, I've had severe injuries, chronic injuries, disabilities that have sort of impeded upon my narrative. I've had to learn how to reconstruct my story, reconstruct myself as to how I talk about myself in scenarios and in the world, to the world. And learning how to do that with clients is a very powerful tool for change of behavior. One of the issues I found that I use some traits from REBT is challenging someone's perceived thoughts or irrational thoughts about themselves, where it's like, I actually had this conversation recently with a client. They came to me with, I'm an absolute all or nothing drinker. And I said to them, I was like, okay, and she's not gonna have any issues with me talking about this because she talked about it herself. She had a Christmas party coming up and she's changing schools as a teacher. And she was like, if I start, I won't stop. And I was like, okay, let's play this out. Where else in your life have you been more balanced or been more controlled? And, there was a variety of places, like the way she raises her children, her finances, where she's bought houses. I'm like, okay, so we have success in other areas of your life where being more maintainable and balanced in your approach has resulted in success. So you've just proven to me by looking at your own history that you're not actually all or nothing. It's just your language and narrative around this particular topic that is, when it comes to drinking, I'm all or nothing. I was like, now you don't have to drink if you don't want to, but if you also want to, it's perfectly okay. Provided let's just work on changing the cognitive reappraisal, linguistic reappraisal of how you describe that scenario. Again, challenging that narrative and creating a different narrative of yourself in that situation. And she basically messaged me the next day and she was like, I felt really proud. I know you're not big on being proud of the basics being done, but she's like, I went out to this party, to the Christmas party. I didn't drink. I had the option to drink. I chose not to. And I woke up and did my meal prep and got on with my Saturday. Now, you don't have to be that neurotic about it. But the fact is, rather than punish her for being like, oh, don't go to this party, stuff you're an idiot. It was more so, you're a grown adult. You have the choices. You've told me you're all or nothing. I say bullshit. I said to her, if your children came to you and said, hey, I'm either all into my homework or I'm not doing any homework, what would you say? She's like, that's an absolute cop out. And I just, challenge that and have them actually do their homework and do something. I was like, so why are you letting yourself off with the standard is better than your children? And she's like, oh yeah, that's a good point. And so once I challenged that and gave her that narrative sort of reflection, she was like, holy shit, you're right. And, that kind of led to her challenging that narrative. So again, one of the key points I find to behavior change, especially to people that come to me with not so much neuroticisms, but at least internalized identities that they've been told they have or they've been diagnosed with or given, is a lot of the way they describe it is in the language of describing themselves that kind of hooks them in. Challenging that and giving them the ability to confront that narrative and the identity they've created tends to result in them looking at that from a different angle and changing the way they approach it. And then it's just about encouraging them to continue to do that when those scenarios come up. I missed that ramble. I missed your third question. What was the third question again?
The third one was on performance is beyond the gym and how seeing that can create more of a super glue to shifting the identity.
Oh, yes, 100%. Absolutely. Like a big thing, like I was saying before in life, is that we perform in every aspect of our life. People think that, gym stops, training, lifestyle change, modifications, like, oh, well, I went to the gym 3 times, I train a little bit hard and then it stops. That's where I'm done. And it's like, well, sure, that's a progress. That's a step forward. That's, we're moving forward in the right direction here. Let's reflect on that. Perhaps you were someone that was doing 1 session every 2 to 3 weeks and your performance in the gym was like very mediocre. How about we can get that to 2 or 3 sessions? Let's get that going. Sure. But then it's like, what disciplines can we modify and move across to other areas of your life that can show promise and progress by implementing those tools, like the discipline of training hard, knowing what failure is, knowing how to push yourself, knowing how to challenge your limits, challenge your beliefs. I'm not someone who can lift heavy. I'm not someone who can lift to failure. I'm not someone who can do X, Y, Z. Challenging those things and driving them home in other areas of their life. Well, what happens if you then apply that to your studies? Well, let's push your studies to failure. Let's see what happens when you don't go to bed when you're tired. Let's see what happens if you turn off the TV and just don't give into distraction. All those areas where you're challenging the belief and you're challenging that performance narrative, you realize and this is why it was one of my favorite quotes, is that you perform in every realm of your life. You perform in every aspect of your life. That's why I'm so big on teaching my clients to fail first, fail hard, and fail early. If I can get you to a failure point in your early training career, then pulling back your RAR and worrying about all those nuances becomes a lot easier and more manageable because they know what that performance aspect is like. Trying to get someone to nail their, 1 RAR, 2 RAR, or what have you, and they've never trained before is a waste of time to me. I would rather get you to failure, push your ass hard, see what that performance is like as a skill, because then it just goes like I straight away can add that to the rest of your life. Let's look at, what does it look like if you go out and challenge, have KFC or takeaway that night? Okay, how did it make you feel? Horrible. I woke up bloated and fatty and I felt gross and okay, cool. So do you want to have takeaway every night? No, I feel crap. Okay, so we can reflect on that. You know that you can perform better with your nutrition just like you perform better in the gym. Now we start to see that process performance orientation coming through where we can really motivate people and go, all right, you know what? You don't have to have shitty food every single night. Just like you don't have to train once every 2 weeks like an absolute pussy. You can actually get into the gym and train hard. Well, can you not, be nutrient hard? Can you not train, rest as hard as you train? Can you not diet as hard as you train? It's not about being neurotic about like, meal prep everything and weigh everything out. It's like, let's take some of these skills and apply it to your nutrition. Get some basics down, have more lean proteins, have more plant-based matter, have more grains, stop having as much processed food. Fantastic. Now we've got the ball rolling and you're realizing the performance in your nutrition, in your rest, in your sleep, in your lifestyle, in your stress management, in your sex life, in your family life. All of that is going to impact your performance in the gym as well. Now we've come full circle in the fact you realize that performance is just continual.
I love that. And I'm going to add something on to Dalton. With everything that Ben just said, something that he brought up a lot in there is not only purpose and the fact that performance is about a skill and getting better at skills, which require failing, but it's also very predetermined on you need to do, you need to be, you need to feel. It's not just based on, okay, let's just perform and get an outcome. It's perform and improve because life is just all about improvements. But the thing that I wanted to pose to you is, here's an example. I have someone who's struggling to get any consistent change. And when we had a conversation, which bring in the keyword awareness, she realized that through motivational interviewing, she realized that she feels she needs to see big changes and make big changes in order to get results. It's the only way that she feels it's worth getting results. And before I did the questioning, she was like, I feel like life is just way too full on. There's so much going on. I don't have time to do this. I don't have time to do that. The only thing I can do is drink more water and try to make better food choices. I'm like, okay, so isn't better food choices and focusing on drinking more water than you are making room for more change and making positive changes? And that was when she had the aha moment. But also bringing into this, it's not good enough to say you want to improve your food or you want to do X activity. You need to break it down so that you have parameters and specifics. Otherwise, you're aiming at nothing. And that is something that I find really difficult to hone into clients because they're very vague in the way that people usually say, oh, I'm eating healthier. Like you need to get
towed up.
Yeah, it's like you need to get so specific if you want to be able to then measure that and get better at it. Because you could say that you failed that last week, but it's like, what did you fail? You said you wanted to eat healthier. You started doing this, but you didn't do these other things. What was your definition of healthy? Because you can't act on something that isn't clarified.
Sure. Yeah. No, and I love all of that. And before I dive into those, because they're all aspects that I really want to say something here. I think to summarize for the listeners and people that are watching what Ben was talking about right at the initial aspect to determining all the things that he was talking about there is the context determines the content. So the context of your situation, the context of what your goals are, the context of what we're looking at doing together will determine the content. And so when we're thinking about these things here, we're always looking and trying to expand and understand. And so the more you can communicate, the more you can clarify, the more you can reflect and analyze, the better that everyone, all of the coaches here can help you out. But, your coach in what other relationship that you've got there. Because that is how we determine these things. That's where all this stuff comes from. It doesn't really just come from us just knowing better. It's like a journey of discovery together. And so to summarize Ben's amazing spiel is the context before the content is a really nice, easy way to think about it. And I love what you were just talking about there, Ruby, with the aspects of targets, the aspects of criteria, and the aspects of clarity. And this is something that we spoke about on the last podcast, but a nice, easy way that I like to think about it, or at least use for my clients, is I was in the army years ago, and one of the ways that they taught us to shoot was not to shoot at a target, but we were to shoot at a line in the target, right? We were to aim in the very middle of it and aim for this like very specific line that crossed over where our like crosshairs would match up with that. And we were taught to aim small, because if we aim small, we miss small. And so I like to translate that same idea to making my goals, making my actions, making my decisions that I have or with my clients so tiny, so narrow, so specific that I know exactly what it is that I'm trying to get out of this here. So that way then I define the criteria for what that looks like, so that when I am doing stuff, I have ammunition to either say, right, I didn't do X, Y, and Z. And so it's not a vague failure of I wasn't healthy. It was I didn't eat 20 grams of protein, because that's how specific we can get in terms of the calories, macros, and stuff like that as well. So I did as an example. But Ruby's so spot on there with that question of it's very hard for us to determine actions and follow through with actions without that clarity. And so and Ben raised it. I don't know if anyone heard it, but he talked about Socratic questioning, which is this idea of asking why, or reflecting on the question or the statement and stuff like that. That was being made. He also spoke about the ability to reflect and understand, or like peel back, maybe not always a why question, but a what or a how, or just continually trying to go levels deeper. And so if anyone's listening to this as a coach, or anyone's listening to this as a client, and your coach is maybe speaking to you, what they're trying to get out of you is a deeper understanding of where this statement comes from. Because if we can understand a deeper experience of that, we can then figure out and determine if this is something that is in however we want to approach the change, right? If this is something that's psychological bound, or if this is something environmental bound, whatever kind of model we want to use. And so some great examples of ways to understand that is Socratic questioning, like we spoke about on the last podcast, and Ben raised it here. But for those that are listening, that's where you take a statement and you ask why. You repeat that statement back. So like, I want to lose 5 kilos of body, or like 5 kilos. Why do you want to lose 5 kilos of body? Well, because that would mean that I get to lose 5 kilos so that I can weigh less or put on smaller clothes or something like that. Okay, so why is putting on smaller clothes important to you? Because if I put on smaller clothes, that means I feel more confident in myself. Okay, so why is feeling more confident important to you? Well, if I don't feel confident, I make poor decisions. I tend to not care for myself, and I don't value the things that I'm doing, and therefore I really don't follow through with the stuff that I'm doing. See how I start to like really dig out and pull out answers and stuff. This is just made up, obviously, super easy example, but we all have that stuff. And the cool thing is, like, even if you're wrong, if you do this to yourself, if you're guessing this yourself, we naturally as humans don't like open loops. We don't like open or incorrect statements. We want to fix it. So if you say to yourself, I don't think I am self-confident, or I am very self-confident, you'll feel weird saying one of them, and you'll be like, that's not true. And we don't like it. We want to correct it. And so naturally, let yourself correct it and figure it out along the way. Take stabs at it. And coaches can do the same thing. And so that, even just a technique like that, helps you get deeper and deeper and pull apart the actual underlying reasons and stuff like that. And the deeper stuff that we're trying to get to there is a lot of the stuff that Ben and I love to talk about, which is this behavioral change facilitation. It's all understanding all of these slightly deeper levels of thinking, how those connect into stuff like self-determination theory or goal setting theory or whatever it is that we want to talk about here. But it's understanding the perspectives, the ideals, the values, and the things that we actually care about on a deeper level, and helping us cut through the bullshit so that we can figure out what's the fastest way to make a change when it comes to those things there. Another thing that you did ask, Ruby, was the idea of how do I help clarify that or get out something around values. And so I was like, I wanted to talk about values. I can't remember the exact question, but I can speak about values as well, which is essentially compassion and empathy. And I think you said not just performance, but how do you feel and stuff like that, right?
Yes.
And so that's a really big thing that I love to teach through a type of counseling style called acceptance commitment therapy, which is basically just the idea that we all fuck up. We all stuff up and we do things bad. And instead of us trying to like wrestle with it or change it or, belittle ourselves for it, it's rather saying, right, I want to accept what I did, not be complacent and give up on myself. Not acceptance isn't complacency. Acceptance is saying, right, like I understand this from a separate view. I'm not judging myself for the action or the choice that I made. and I'm going to have a think about why I did this or what this looks like, and can I do something about changing this? Yes or no? It's a non-judgmental, non-biased way to do it. And if you can learn to do that, we become less reactive. And a lot of the time we're reactive to things because we've just got so much stress going on in our lives or overwhelm or heaps of shit that just, work life, kids, everything like that, trying to like occupy our thoughts, that as just a reflex, we are primed to react in a way so that we don't have to actually think about it or process whatever's going on. But most of the time, we're reacting not because of whatever occurred there, but because of something else that we're not addressing in that moment. So learning how to practice acceptance and commitment therapy helps bring in this aspect of mindfulness, which helps us bring in this idea of understanding what's going on presently in that situation, not trying to say, right, I can't deal with this, work's too busy or whatever, I'll think about this later. And really just addressing it here and now and saying, right, okay, what can I do about this? Was this my fault? Was this not my fault? What can I do about changing this? Yes, I can do something. No, I can't do something. And that's it. Not I'm a failure because I didn't do this thing and everyone's going to hate me for it or whatever, and I should run away or whatever. It's simply curiosity-based observations of what you've done in a way that's like kind and compassionate. And that's hard. It's not easy. We all have been taught to beat the shit out of ourselves. We talk to ourselves like we're the worst people in the world. The way that we would talk inside of our heads, you would never let someone else talk to you that way. And we do it to ourselves over and over and over again. So it is a skill to kind of learn. And it's something that Australians really just don't have to do well. And probably a lot of other cultures as well, but Australians especially, we have like the tall poppy syndrome where we cut ourselves down and we don't like to stand out. And there's a lot of aspects where we're suppressed on that. So we have to really learn to do this in a way that's we feel comfortable with doing it so that we can address what's going on in that moment, not try and put it off later and deal with it, have that putting it off impact our behaviors that we're trying to change on this, and make the whole process like eating better, training better, sleeping better, a completely ruined process because we can't deal with the stress that we've just had to accumulate that will forever accumulate. It's not like we can ever get rid of it. Yeah. Did I answer the questions? I think I did.
There is so much more I want to throw at you. And I might throw some more back at you before we go back to Ben, but something you said before I go into questions is it is hard, not easy. And there is a part in my Team Ruby introduction that I share them a podcast that I did off the spiel where I was thinking, hey, people online make it look easy because the people that are online are people that have been either doing it for ages, but who in their right mind shows their startup, shows their failures, or even thinks that their startup is going to lead to something greater, because your goals evolve and you should evolve with them, which is actually something I want to talk about later. So pin that one there. But
totally. I love that.
You should allow your goals to evolve with you. And what I was going to go into with you that you said is the goal setting. It's really important to know what are the right types of goals to set, which I would say.
Yeah, that's a great way. Great question.
Because
all right, cool.
Process goals are like I always say, you will never get to an outcome by wanting the outcome. You'll never get to the outcome by focusing on the outcome, because there has been nothing stated that will get you there. There is no bridge there. You can want the destination all you want, but unless you know how to drive a car, get in a car, do the tests that you need to do to get your learners, then you'll peep later, then you'll peep later, and all the crap that happens in the other worlds. But you're never going to get there without the initial stuff, without the foundation stuff. And then something else you said was about people falling back into that automatic reaction state, because we react most of the time. So updating your default settings and baseline habits is so important because of that. And I always say you can click your fingers and get to your dream body composition, but you're never going to maintain it, because what's going to happen then? Or you could click your fingers, fix all the behavioral habitual mindset, thought processing, all that kind of shit, fix all of that, and then leave the rest to drive, and you'll get to where you want to be and you'll stay there. Yeah, it's a longer process, because now that we got rid of all the bullshit that's holding you back, you have to actually do the work to get there. But if you just get there overnight, you're going to find yourself back to the start. So what is the shortest process after all?
Yeah.
I'm sure you, I hope you're actually this.
No, that's some great questions there, and I'm sure I'll miss some, but like there's a few things that definitely jumped out at me. And I really love that the idea of identity and understanding the process of where we're going. I think I would challenge, and like I tried to not reiterate to my clients, that rushing to whatever behavior that we're trying to get to the end goal as fast as possible is not ever the quickest way to do something, because we've seen in the research that none of those ways end up being sustainable for the long term. And so whilst it might initially get you to the target of that goal quicker, the like whatever time period that we end up comparing it to, the longer way to go about that proper behavior change ends up winning out, and you sustain that. So if we visit people like this 12 months time, 5 years time, 10 years time, those that have done the actual behavior change work or whatever have sustained their goal for years, whereas the other people are just, potentially chasing it over and over and over again, being there for short periods of time, but hating themselves for it every time they do it, and kind of doing that cycle over and over again as well.
Wait, something you just said, hating themselves for every time they do it. This is something that a lot of people don't realize, is that every single action you take has a tax. It has a cost. And if you're doing things that continually prove to you that you fail, that you suck, you're only increasing the tax that you will have to pay back on your lack of faith in yourself, your lack of belief in yourself. And then what's that going to cause down the road? You're not going to have the patience to do the process you need to do the right way, because with all this time passing, you're feeling further and further away from your goals. So you're going to want to rush it more. It's human nature.
Totally. Yeah. So that's like such an important part of this process, is understanding that the effort that we put in isn't a direct outcome or a reflection of the results and stuff like that we will get. But the results that we get can increase the amount of effort that it feels like we're putting in. So we can continue to arbitrarily increase that amount of effort. So if we fail, or if we do something that's hard and hate ourselves for it over and over again, every action that we take after that ends up feeling like it takes 5, 10, 20, 30 times more effort, mental effort, to try and do this. And the way that I try and imagine this is like this idea of having either a motivational debit card or bank account or something like that, where you've got 100 motivational points or something like that, and everything that you do, you're spending those points on actions throughout the day and stuff like that. When on the choices that we make that don't sustain the goals that we're trying to do and don't address the actual behaviors and try and just address the symptoms, tend to cost more and more and more over time. And everything else outside, all the stuff that we're trying to like actively work on, we can spend that money on, but we also, everything that we do in our life takes from that as well, that tax idea like you were talking about there. So just doing anything else is taxing away at that, and before you know it, the effort for you to meal prep or something like that might have just been 10 motivational points, but at the start of the week, but at the end of the week, after all the shit's happened and you failed out a few times, it might become 15, 20, 30, motivational points, and you end up not having enough credit like that to spend again over time. And so it becomes harder and harder. And so we end up creating this disparity between the actions that we're trying to do and the perceived effort that it takes for this, because the brain, it doesn't have a receptor for these things. It literally, how our brain operates is through references. So it's like, when was I trying to do something last time? Okay, how hard was that? All right, prepping to be fucking Dick Skin Lean on stage is so hard. Am I willing to do that again? No, I'm not. Okay, well, when I was dieting and doing that, this, like, I got me results, but it was, this like 10 out of 10 hardness or whatever. Like, am I willing to do that? No, I'm not. So fuck it. I'm not going to do anything, because it's not worth me putting in that amount of effort to get the actions or whatever. Completely misunderstanding that the reference that our brain is comparing it to completely different time, completely different context, and completely different situation for it. But that's how our brain operates. It tries to convince us that the actions that we're trying to do will have a misconstrued amount of effort that we're trying to get to achieve this. So subconsciously, we're going to feel this resistance to wanting to do those things. And so that can lead us to these points where it's like, I don't want to do this because it feels harder than it actually is. And that's where all these skills and all these tools and strategies that we've been talking about already help out with this, challenging those beliefs and helping reframe those ideas, and using motivational interviewing and ambivalence calling and stuff like that to help them understand those processes and all of those aspects there to overcome that. But that's like the really the deeper mechanics of what's actually going on, is that that gap and the perceived effort between that thing is happening over and over again, and our brain is just referring to the time we were successful at it. And that's the hardest thing with the prep industry, is it fucks everyone, because every time they try and diet again afterwards, they can only compare it to like with their prep, especially if they only do one prep, because that means they never get the experience to the second time to realize it is like 100 times easier the second time to prep than the first time. The first time to prep is so scary. You have no idea of what's going on. Your brain doesn't know how to comprehend what's happening. And so you feel everything at 100%. And even like if you have some like psychological skills, and you could probably reduce this down. But in my experience, Ben's probably the only coach out there that's doing that properly, because I still talk to all these coaches that just don't fucking know. And I'm seeing the same shit happen that used to happen at like Flex Success, or same thing happen with like other companies and stuff like that. Like Denver, great guy, I love him and stuff like that. But I don't see enough motivational stuff around those things to help it out, or and so nothing wrong with their approaches. Their approaches and stuff like that are great. And I'm sure Joey Cantillon would be one of the same ones as well. I'd have to chat to him, but I haven't for a while. But all those guys, excellent prep coaches, know all the stuff when it comes to those things. But I don't think most people have an understanding or an awareness around psychology like we do to get to the point to help out the athletes like that. And so all we do have is skills and strategies to help eliminate all the psychological bullshit that happens to make the results consistent. That would be tracking calories, macros, water, sleep, blah, 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 like recording all this stuff, right? Micromanaging your life to get to those results. Insane amount of fucking effort that you put into doing something like that. And our brain has no idea what's going on. Our body's freaking the fuck out because we've dropped down in so much body fat that leptin's through the roof and trying to make us hungry all the time. Hormones all through the roof. And we hate ourselves because we're like, oh, too fat, too fat, too fat. And then we're all of a sudden lean and we're like, wow, I'm starting to look good. I feel shit. Everything sucks, but I'm starting to look good. And so it's this really confusing time because everything is overwhelming. And so after you do that prep, even if you don't place or whatever, like you've achieved literally one of the hardest things ever to be done by people. But if you never try and do that again, you only ever have this comparison of how ridiculously hard that activity was trying to do that. Now, I could scale any learning behavior like that, from not doing it all the way through to a prep, because it would kind of fall along that line there. Most aren't as hard as that. Most are a bunch easier. But that's how our brain works, right? As we compare to the time that we were trying to do it, semi-successful is fucked, because it means when we stuff it up, we're like, I don't want to do, that 50 points worth of motivational stuff to do this task or whatever, because that's too much. It's going to cost too much. And we're forgetting that, like, we're at the start, like things that we're trying to do, the actions that we're trying to take cost 1 point, but we're imagining, because the last time that we had the comparison for the thing was, all those extra points and stuff like that as well. And so we end up kind of having this misconstrued perception of what we're trying to do, making us feel hopeless and helpless, and we can't actually do anything about it, when not the case at all.
Okay, I'm gonna throw a lot at you, Ben. So can we do these?
Let's dance.
Let's do these in chunks so that I can
okay.
burst different things in here, because there is a lot. So
yeah.
Something Dalton just brought up at the very end, which is really important, is we try to pick up where we left off, and then we have misconstrued perceptions of how it feels, or how easy it should feel, or what it felt like, or the fact that, oh, I did this before, I've been doing this for X many amount of years, this should come easy now that I'm back on it. But like, that's the perception that so many people have. If maybe they went really hard before, they got some amazing outcome, maybe they laid off for a little bit, and then they're getting back into it again. They expect to just pick it up from there and everything will just be as easy, even though it's many years later. And the way the body responds, your body doesn't just get put on pause. Things happen in that. And then feeding into that aspect is that we tend to only remember the good stuff, the things that went well, and we tend to think what was good is subjective as well. But memory isn't reliable for this. And it can even be said with the realities of losing weight before. Like, say, if you went on keto and you lost weight before, or the realities of getting lean if you prepped once in your life before and you're picking back up again. All of that fed into what I just said, and then I can go into the next part.
Yeah, so getting like into trying to just break down the questions. Hit me again. I'm just having an absolute fucking mind blank. Jesus Christ.
So we tried to pick up where we left off. Dot point.
Trying to run 5Ks.
Yeah.
After taking 5K time, like 6 months off or whatever, and going, I'm
going
to
run yeah. So
that person.
100% there in the way you described that. It's completely right. People think that like things are easy. It was easy at the time when I did it, or like I've prepped before. We have this recollection that is it's whatever the last experience we had was the experience we're going to have again, right? Now, one of the biggest problems is life. Like you described, the body doesn't stay still, right? Like the body doesn't stop, time doesn't stop. But in saying that, also your life doesn't stop. You like, just as your body doesn't stay, just pause and stay where it was. I'm like, oh, you got to 3% body fat, but you don't want to prep anymore. Well, now we're staying here until you go again. Life doesn't do that either. So when people go based off the, like, last time I prepped, I was 25, living at mum's house, and I was having no bills, and, I was eating whatever I wanted, and I was doing 20,000 steps a day, and, I was on Clen, Tren, VAR, and Test. And then it's like, okay, now you're 31 with a child and a job and a business and a career, and you're at university, or you're doing an upskilling course, or, you've got a husband to think about, or a boyfriend, a wife to think about. Those things, as Dalt was describing, those all become those psychological taxations on your body that last time you prepped didn't happen. So now you've got this misconstrued idea that I should be just as good as this as I was last time. And now that it's harder, I'm a piece of shit because it's not coming off as easy, right? Like, I've got this idea that it should just be flowing off me, that the weight should be moving. But the reality is, even when you look at comparison, and have social comparison theory, people talk about like upstream and downstream comparison, and they also look at selective comparison. So, don't compare yourself to other people, compare yourself to yourself. But even you as a person are no longer in that same period of time where you were, where that thing was established or achieved or successful. Now, that doesn't say that it isn't successful, you can't do it again. It's just that what it's going to take to get there is vastly different to who you were at the time when it was successful last time, right? Like, that you can't rely on the same fuel of motivation. You can't rely on the same goals. You can't rely on the same life circumstances and environments, because all of these things have changed physiologically, psychologically, environmentally. All of these aspects become, completely different to what got us successful. And as you kind of alluded there before, is that moving on from that is that your memories don't play fair. They're not going to be, they're not going to help you out when you think they will. They're not going to be your best friend. They're not going to help you achieve the job like you think it will. When we go through things like an aggressive cut, your body, like, you're so deprived of fuel, of energy, that most of your systems shut down.
So that was that part of this podcast, and you will be hearing the next part next week. There are 3 parts to this. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope you get a lot out of it. And you will be hearing from us 3 next week.